Why Tower of Fantasy failed in China.
Tower of Fantasy quickly become one of the most hyped game on 2022,
I wouldn't
currently
say that,
gathering
but okay.
3 times more viewers than Genshin Impact on Twitch. With multiple big YouTubers also covering the game before it even released, I think you will be surprised that this game is actually not very successful on China, which is where the games come from. If you look at the popularity chart on Billy Games, which is sort of Play Store for China, you will see that Genshin is pretty much always on the top. By the way, the rank 1 is only there because the game will be released tomorrow. I assume it will drop down very quickly after a while. If you're
so
curious,
Genshin Impact is like #1 in China is what he's saying, right? It's like this game's just on top. Like, I think you can make the same argument for Tower of Fantasy even on Twitch. Is that Tower of Fantasy will probably fall off a lot on Twitch after, you know, like the drops campaign ends, and like I know they're doing like multiple ones, so like as soon as that's over, viewership will go down. That's what happened with Lost Ark. That's just that, like, that's the way it goes, and it's not like the game's bad, it's just that's the way that people consume content. It's the same as that PoE on Friday, whenever the league comes out, is going to be fucking massive. It's going to be like the biggest game, but then 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, 2 months after, it's not going to be. There's always a rotation that people go through with every game, whether it's Genshin, Tower of Fantasy, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, like any of this, Lost Ark,
about the
Valorant
game, I will showcase it tomorrow on my channel. It's a rather interesting game.
I
Back
think
to find
seems
Tower
good
of
to me.
Fantasy on the popularity chart. You can see a lot of familiar titles such as Arknight, Azure Lane, Minecraft, Bed Grand Order, Honkai Impact 3rd, and many others. But Tower of Fantasy, it's not found. It's not even in the top 50. When you search up the game, you will realize the downloads for Tower of Fantasy pales in comparison to big titles. For example, Genshin has 189 million downloads.
190 fucking million versus 10 million. And like the best thing about it, I love, like, bro, it seems like the fucking Chinese reviewers are savage. Like, the top game is rated 3 fucking stars, and Tower of Fantasy was 2 stars. It's not like how it is here, where it's like, oh, good game, 5 stars, sounds good. No, they're like, good game, not really. You know, 2 star.
And Tower of Fantasy only have 11 million. Arknight has 225 million. Honkai has 145, and Punishing Grey Raven has 70 million. This is weird because the game is not bad, so what is actually happening here? In order for me to explain what happened, we first need to understand this. The social credit system. Remember this meme?
Oh no! How does this even relate?
Well, it's not really a meme because the social credit system does exist in China. It's a system that judges your worth based on what you do. If you do good things, you get points. If you do bad things, you deduct points. Just like how the government judge the citizens, the gamers also judge the game. Not just the gameplay or graphics, but also the social responsibilities. There is a nickname for Tower of Fantasy in China. Tower of Fantasy in Chinese is called Huanta, but the nickname is called Tota. I roughly translated it to Tower of Death. This comes from that one Tower of Fantasy to Tower of Death.
I can see why they would say that. You know what I mean? Like, I could see a world where that exists.
This comes from that one Tower of Fantasy promotional video for Meryl, which they steal Honkai Impact weapon asset, as shown here. Once they realize people are not actually stupid, well...
Oh! It's Tower of Theft because it was just like Genshin Impact, and because Genshin Impact is like that's like the premier game in China, people view it as like just bullshit. So they're not talking about stealing your money with gacha. Well, why the fuck would they be saying that if Genshin's the fucking #1 game? I mean, seems like a bit of a double standard here. So I guess, that makes sense.
They remove it. Another one comes from them plagiarizing an animation video made by a small Japanese creator. As evidently shown here, you can see there's a lot of similarity. It got on so bad that
Like
even
this-
the original creator tweeted a complaint on Twitter, and of course, Tower of Fantasy apologized by blaming it on a third party.
Of
Okay,
course.
fine. Promotional video are typically outsourced, so they can blame it on third party.
Yeah.
But what about that one time where they copy Genshin 5-star reviews using a bot? So what you're seeing here is the review for iOS for Tower of Fantasy. So before this happened, there is a very game break.
See, it's like, whenever you think of all of this context, is it really that big of a surprise that they're so shameless to lock supply boxes behind time gates? Like, it really actually makes a lot of sense whenever you put everything into context. It's like, oh, you have to fucking wait 3 days for this arbitrary period of time that we've just invented for you to open up this box. It's Tower of Time theft as well.
Bug happening on Tower of Fantasy, which makes people review bombing Tower of Fantasy and made it go down to, I think, 3.1 rating. And yeah, it's pretty bad. But suddenly the
Max
rating
is
gone
10.
up to 4. And naturally, the people feel something is not right. And then they went on check the 5-star review. Guess what? A lot of review are pretty much done by bots. As you can see, there is a comma and a dot. This is because it's made by bot, which is why every single comment has this thing. And why is copy from Genshin? Well, this word is actually Yoimiya in China.
Okay, yeah. I see. Genshin stole assets. Here's the thing, is that I think that I do find it to be hypocritical that people are critical of Genshin Impact. Critical of Tower of Fantasy because Tower of Fantasy was derivative of Genshin Impact, but Genshin Impact was incredibly derivative of Breath of the Wild. I will say, though, that it seems like over time, Genshin Impact has evolved to have its own identity. Like, over time, this, I do believe, has generally happened. Whereas, at the beginning, it did seem like this was very much derivative of Breath of the Wild. You know, this is, you know, Breath of the Wild plus waifus and gacha. And it's improved since then. You know, we have the cinematics, and there's actually, apparently, there's a story to the game. And it would make sense. Like, I don't know how people in China originally approached Genshin Impact, right? Did they originally like it? Did they originally say that it was the same thing as Breath of the Wild? Probably not, because Breath of the Wild isn't a Chinese game. So it's probably, you know, maybe a little bit of nationalism there or whatever, right? I don't know. But I think it makes sense that people would feel that way. And that's, I think, what the difference in a lot of people's minds would be between Genshin Impact and Tower of Fantasy, is that Genshin Impact has since then evolved beyond being derivative of Breath of the Wild, and it's evolved into its own thing. And Tower of Fantasy, it seems like, has not really done that yet.
And I didn't know Tower of Fantasy has Yoimiya. Okay, fine. Maybe the bot is not made by the official. Maybe someone else made the bot just to screw Tower of Fantasy. It is possible. So let's leave that aside for now. Let's talk
seems
about
unlikely.
in-game. So about this move. I don't know if it's heavily inspired or straight up just they ran out of creativity. Guess what? Honkai has this move as well. Pretty much exactly the same, except for a little bit of difference in the visual effect. Yeah. I mean, it's up to you. There's also a lot of weapons, have a lot of similarities in Honkai. Is that copy or is it heavily inspired? I don't know. Are they just lazy, not making their own unique weapons? I mean, it's up for debate. There are also a lot.
It's probably a little bit of all the above, where like they stole a lot of stuff themselves, and then they also were like, yeah, well, they probably liked the game, they thought the game was cool, so they took a lot of stuff as well. I think that if you understand a lot about, like, you've played a lot of video games over the years, you'll see that this happens a lot. Like, this is actually, it's extremely common that, like, video games will just straight up steal systems from other games. It's the same thing as, like, streamers, right? It's like, remember Ludwig did the subathon, then everybody's doing a subathon after that. There was a time that people didn't use, like, as soon as, like, I think, like, I was one of the first people to start using this mic and this camera, because Reckful suggested for me to, you know, Reckful was using this camera, and then I was like, well, Reckful's got great fucking video, well, I should use the same camera as Reckful. So I asked him, and then I bought it. And then somebody somebody saw me and they're like, wow, well, this guy's getting a lot of viewers. He's successful. I'm going to buy the same one. And then people did the same thing with the mic. Look, the Shure SM7B, this is the mic that I have. This is the main mic that like 95% of like high-end streamers use, and even podcasters use as well. It's extremely common. I'm actually thinking about getting another one to try out a different mic, but I don't know yet. But either way, this is definitely one of the main ones. And it's like, it's $400, right? Which is a reasonable expense if you're talking about, you know, a business that you are already reasonably successful in. I think that's a $400 business expense is extremely reasonable. And especially for how long it lasts. And I think this happens with everything. The point I'm getting is like, streamers do this, video games do this, movies do this, and I think it's the same thing as like the DC extended universe. Like, I'm sorry, but like, you just did this because Marvel did this. But nobody gave a shit about the DC extended universe whenever the Snyder Cut for Justice League came out, because the Snyder Cut was fucking awesome and Darkseid was amazing. And it was exactly how you would have expected them to be. So nobody really gives a shit about this stuff, about copying. It's just that your copy has to be good. That's the difference. The copy has to be good. The Genshin copy was good. And it was also, it came into its own. It became its own thing. You see kind of what I'm saying? Marvel and DC copy each other. Well, there was even a joke. Didn't they have this was in like the 80s, where they had Darkseid literally tell Thanos that he was a knockoff of Darkseid in the crossover comics? I'm like 95% sure this happened. So it's like, yeah. And yeah, they literally said it and they admitted it. They're like, yeah, you know, of course, right? I mean, Thanos was pretty cool. Darkseid was pretty cool, so we're going to have our own Darkseid. It's going to be like this, too. Yeah, of course.
A lot of servers issues during the launch of the game. There are like maintenance for every single day during the launch of the game. There are game-breaking bugs that I said just now.
Man, some things never change. So what he's saying is that there was already a launch of this game that had game-breaking bugs, and now we have even more game-breaking bugs.
That make the game got 3.1 rating on the Silly Game Store, and I'm gonna slightly explain what the bug is and why a lot of whales actually left the game because of the bug. This is quite a long one, so bear with me, okay? So the first bug happens when people realize you can use another device to force login while you are completing a transaction on the first device, so you can get double the currency you paid for this method. And then eventually people realize you can also use this method for
Yeah, we gotta like, so can anybody translate Chinese for me? Because I need to look something up after this.
Dungeon reward as well. So people start to get insane gear by just keep refreshing the dungeon by logging in from another device. And you know, in Genshin you have this artifact system where you have a lot of variables. So you can get like 5 lines of damage, or you can get 5 lines of health. Well, Tower of Fantasy have that too, and people are using this bug to pretty much keep on resetting the stats.
Yeah, rerolling.
So what happened is a lot of people get insane gear by a very early game. I mean, people don't really have to grind every day to get those artifacts that has the top tier stats, because they can abuse this bug. But of course, Tower of Fantasy went on an emergency maintenance, and the solution is to prevent you to log in on a second device if you already logged in somewhere else. People who abused the bug before are banned. Not long afterward, people realize another bug again, which you can get unlimited SSR weapon. So I wouldn't...
So this is like the new world of China.
Get into how they do it. Basically, they have something about messing with internet connection and the game client. They could like claim the item and then...
So let me guess what they're doing. They're using an IP blocker to block one of the IP addresses of the game, and then probably claim the item twice. It's basically a lag switch. Exactly. Yeah. There are other things you could do in like WoW and other games that you could do this with too. So I know about it.
Turn off the internet connection, and then after they turn back the internet connection, they will have another SSR weapon, something like that, right? So turns out some people started to have all the weapon without even paying for the game. And of course, all the whales are really angry because people spend money to pull, but some free-to-play player just got them for free. But of course,
I think that's good. I think that's funny. That's actually funny to me. I remember, what was the game that this happened on, where like everybody got like a free skin and like they got a bunch of free stuff and like the whales were mad. Was it Lost Ark or fucking Diablo Immortal? I don't remember which one. And it was just like, if you're gonna get mad about that, think about why you're mad about that. Why are you mad that you are able to spend more money than this person and get ahead of them? Like, in my opinion, if you just took the gacha out of these games, the game would just be a better game. Like, period. It would just simply be a better game. So, like, any time that somebody finds a way to exploit the game and get what whales are paying for free, that sounds good to me. That's what they get. I mean, like, really, if you're spending money on a video game, and it's like, I spend money on the video game too, right? But like, number one, I'm a streamer, I write it off my fucking taxes. Number two, I've got plenty of fucking money to spend. And number three, I'm making videos about it. Like, if you're sitting there in your fucking house, you're not making any videos about this, you're not doing anything, you're just fucking buying armor in a video game, I'm sorry, but I am not sympathetic to your problems if somebody else gets it for free. I don't give a shit. I think it's funny. That's what you get.
Tower of Fantasy found this out. They do an emergency maintenance again. They close their server down and then do a repair. And you can kind of imagine what will happen here. The whale are angry. The players can't play the game because there's constantly maintenance. I mean, the bug of this game is very, very plentiful. Like, they fixed the bug, but then after the maintenance is over, people just found out another bug, and they have to emergency maintenance again. I mean, it's funny because after the server repair, people found out another way to duplicate compensation over and over again, and people even started to use cheat engine to duplicate rewards. And you have so much bug that sure, some people might get banned, but there evidently some people just didn't get banned and enjoy all those free currency. And even mention
this is what happened with I need to do this. This is I mean, like, exploiting the game, like getting things for free in the game, like, I can understand. Like, I don't care about people being able to get like whale rewards for free. I think that's fine because I think the whaling thing is dumb, right? So like, anytime that you can get something for free, that's fine with me. However, like, some of these things you do earn in game. Like, you can earn these in game through activities. So like, you shouldn't be able to do this. It does devalue the game. It's kind of like in New World. Remember whenever they had the Void Ore glitch, and then you had people that were making fucking, like, let me think of how much making, like maybe 7K, 10K per Void Ore, and then it went all the way down to like 2K in a week. That's bad.
The bug or whatever on the chat, the in-game chat, will get you a 1-year mute, and there are players just talking about it, not even like abusing the bug or anything. They got muted and they cannot talk in the game. A lot of people are just straight up disappointed in the game. Whales are not happy. They want a refund for the game because they spend money, but then this is what they get treated for.
They spend money, but then other people get the item that didn't spend money, and so now they're not special anymore and they want their money back. No, I hope they don't get it. Well, actually, I do. I think that, I've said this before, is you should be able to refund all microtransactions for any video game. Like, I mean, in my opinion, with like really no reservations, right? Like, if you buy something like last year and like maybe a year, I don't know, but it should be more than a month.
Some other guy don't even need to spend money, they get all the stuff. And yeah, the game has a lot of problems during the launch of the game, and that caused a huge wave of people pretty much just left the game. They make videos complaining about it, people know about them, and people are
I haven't done this one yet.
Even apparently. Not talking about these game breaking bugs, there are still a lot of minor bugs exist in the game, such as you can float by doing something, I don't know. And for the China version of the game currently, there is a Battle Royale mode. And guess what? There are
I wonder if that's actually any good. People are asking, like, how do you differentiate between buying DLC and microtransactions? I mean, like, one of them is content and the other one is not. I mean, like, if like, what's the difference between, like, what like the Old Hunters DLC and Bloodborne buying 10 pulls on a gacha game? Like, what do you think? You don't know what the difference between those two things are? Well, fuck that. No, I think they should be able to get their money back, because I think it serves as a disincentive for games to have features like that. And I think also, like, you have parents that, like, their kids get their credit card or something like that, and they just make purchases like this. And yes, of course, it is the parents' responsibility as well, but it's like, what favors are you doing to the public by allowing allowing this company to hold all of that money, to take the money from the parent, especially for charging for a tremendous amount of money for something that really has, like, just no intrinsic value at all. So yeah, I think it's one of the things where it's like, yeah, consumer rights. Like, I as much as I think it's funny that whales lose their money, like, it's hilarious to me, and in a way I hope they don't get their money back. I do hope so, because I think they're assholes, but at the same time, it's like, you can't have it work that way, right?
A lot of hackers in the battle royale as well. So leave the technical things aside. There is also a very fundamental design flaw of the game, which is the game, although being an MMO, is actually quite pay to win. Now, the pay to win aspect of the game is not very apparent, but the power creep on Tower of Fantasy is actually very strong. Power creep might be fine for a game like waifu collectors or majority single player game, but it is not a very good thing to have on an MMO that have PvP, where pretty much strength is everything. And if you are a free play,
yeah, I think that's a problem that Diablo Immortal had. I mean, is that you have PvP and pay to win at the same time, and it's like, okay, well, people are going to be pissed off about that. Why wouldn't they be? Now, you can say that it's not pay to win because certain things are equalized, but my understanding is that if you don't have certain weapons, and certain weapons are harder to get if you don't pay to win, like, let's say you get unlucky and you don't have the scythe and the guns and, Nemesis or whatever, and like a new character comes out, and new character's meta now, so, like, you either have to spend money or you're playing outside of the meta and you're losing. So it's like, oh, okay, well, fuck. Like, what are you supposed to do there? So, like, it is pay to win, but it's like binary pay to win, where it's like you either have the character or you don't. Then it's not scaling pay to win like Diablo Immortal, where you just go into a battleground and you've got the same gear as you would have outside of it, and you just beat the shit out of people.
Player and you want to keep up when they keep on introducing power creep, well, guess what? You cannot keep up. It's just impossible to keep up. But actually, the most important reason why Tower of Fantasy is not popular on China is actually because the game itself. The game actually pulled a lot of Genshin player toward it because it has a lot of similarity with Genshin. And believe it or not, they actually advertise themselves as the Genshin Impact killer. I mean, the post is already removed because of how stupid it is once they realize they posted it. They also say it's like the game award winners. Like,
I remember it was like Aeon or like Rift, one of those two games. Like, they even posted about how they were the WoW killer. Like, and I don't even remember which game it was. And people felt the same way about that back then too.
God. A lot of controversy, but let's forget all about the controversy. Let's forget all about the bugs and the pay to win aspect of the game. The game is not polished, and I think this is actually the main reason why Tower of Fantasy is not popular, because this game is so similar to Genshin Impact, and Genshin Impact has a huge player base. And a lot of players from Genshin go ahead to try.
It's like, why go over and play this?
Wow, Genshin is so much better. They dropped the game. I mean, if you play the game, you'll realize the combat just feels cheap. The world is actually not bad. I like the world.
I would agree with that.
Tower of Fantasy,
it's nice.
But the combat just doesn't feel polished. The 2D.
The problem though with the world is that it has the same issue that New World has. Like, you're fighting against the same hyena NPCs throughout the entire game. Like, I'd like to see a little bit more mob variation. It does seem to be kind of copy paste, which, I mean, makes sense since, well, they're gonna copy paste other people's stuff. I mean, they're gonna copy paste their own stuff too. Yeah, I mean, there you go. Of course.
Character's design is also not great. I mean, I play a lot of gacha games, waifu games. A lot of games have fantastic art, but Tower of Fantasy, I feel they lack a lot of of appeal. And it's such a shame because they clearly are a high budget game. Why not invest more into the
why is she
character
wearing
design?
clothes?
I'm not sure. Basically, the social credit of Tower of Fantasy doesn't look so good. So my prediction for the global version of Tower of Fantasy is pretty much the same. People are currently getting hyped for the game because this game shares a lot of similarity to Genshin Impact, and Genshin player will try the game just to realize the game is not as good as Genshin. And it's not Tower of Fantasy fault, honestly. It's just because Genshin is too good. Genshin is too ambitious, and other company simply cannot compete. Don't take this.
Well, that's probably true. Like what he's saying is probably true. Like Genshin Impact does seem to be almost like the World of Warcraft of gacha games, and he's right about this. So, like for example, this is something that Genshin Impact has that a lot of these other games don't have. Look at this right here. Genshin Impact to become the most expensive video game as it nears second anniversary in 2022. Like whenever I'm saying that like Genshin Impact is a very popular game and it's hard for other people to compete against it, like I'm not saying that because I'm a fanboy of the game. I'm saying that because this is what I've read. Like these are the numbers. Like $100 million, right? Is that it? Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Initial budget of $100 million, and they issued a statement mentioning that it costs $200 million per year to produce new content and keep everything running on schedule. Now, you would think that's a lot of money, but look at this. Genshin Impact revenue. $3 billion. Genshin Impact makes $1 billion every 6 months. So whenever you hear 200 million, you're like, wow, that's a lot. But it's actually not. They make more than 200 million in a month. So yeah, it's overhead. It's developing new content. Like Genshin does develop new content a lot faster. So the problem with that is that every other game that's out needs to compete with that. They need to compete directly with Genshin Impact. And so people, like, if you bring out a game and it doesn't have some comparative advantage against Genshin Impact, then nobody's going to play the game. And that's how they corner the market, is that they are already the biggest game, and so they just get bigger and bigger and bigger because they have so many competitive advantages over all of their other competition. Like this is what makes sense. Invest into other games, yeah, exactly, like Honkai Impact and Zenith Zenless Zero or whatever. Exactly. I like Tower better. Well, what I'm saying is that like even if you like Tower of Fantasy better, I can almost guarantee you that like the content cadence is going to be much higher on Genshin Impact, which is going to, on average, I would assume, retain more players. Like that's just what's going to happen. And it's like, yeah, Genshin solo, not online. Well, I think that's a big factor too, definitely. And Tecton reaction video for more context. So I mean, if there's anything I need to know, I'm curious about it. Genshin has no content, man. I mean, it depends on what you call content. Like, it doesn't have, like, 40-man raids, as far as I know, but it has things that keep people engaged in the game. Like, I don't really care about, like, what somebody calls content or what somebody doesn't call content.
Video as me telling you not to play the game, you can honestly still enjoy the game. Try it out and see if it's for you, but I'm just here to inform you what happened over on the China side.
It's good
to know this. The revenue for Tower of Fantasy currently on China is honestly growing. I mean, not as good as it used to be.
Oh my God.
For a gacha game, they are doing alright. Although I'm not too knowledgeable about how much money they are spending to maintaining the game, they're earning about the same as Arknight, even though it's a little bit lower.
That's a lot.
So yeah, that's about it. Peace.
Boob equals money.
We got some pretty big news.
It's that simple. So this is generally the way that I see it. I think Tower of Fantasy definitely, like, because it was already stealing from a existing, you know, it's like WoW is like just so big in the US that every other game that comes out, every other MMO or even fantasy game, a lot of times it's judged in the context of World of Warcraft. And I'm assuming that over in China, they do the exact same thing with Genshin Impact. So, like, whenever one of these new gacha games comes out, it's always compared to whatever the gold standard is. So it's like every like shooter game used to be compared to either like Halo, Call of Duty, or Fortnite or something like that. And there's always like a gold standard game that things are compared to. Like RTS games, real-time strategy games. Still, what are they compared to? Either Age of Empires 2 or fucking, what's it called? StarCraft 2. Like, that's what I would say. It's mainly StarCraft 2. Primarily StarCraft 2. Civilization is like a little bit different genre, but you know, if you have a game like that, you're right. Like any other game that's like Civilization is compared to Civilization. Exactly. And so TOF, Tower of Fantasy ripped off props, font, and other aspects for other games 1-to-1. Oh, I'm not denying that happened, and I think that's probably why people disliked it more in China, and people don't care as much here in the US, is because like people have no real investment in Genshin Impact here, like in the same level that they do in China at least. So like people probably don't care about it that much, and they're more disconnected from that. But like it'd be the same if they brought out a game that was almost just like World of Warcraft, because, you know, it's like a game that's based here in the United States versus, you know, Genshin that's based in China. So it would make sense that people would be more sensitive to that are part of that endemic culture. So anyway, I think that the problem, like, hearing about the whales getting fucked over is funny to me. You know, save the whales. And yeah, they had the emergency shutdown as soon as that happens. And then afterwards, the rest of this stuff is like, you know, it being better than Genshin Impact. Now, I think this video is primarily just about how the game is not as good as Genshin Impact and is also derivative of Genshin Impact. I think it's fair. I will do a review of the game once I do most of the content in the game and I play it thoroughly. And, you know, I'll look at it from like a, you know, like a pay-to-win perspective for a free-to-play player, etc. And, you know, I'll try to do what I did with New World and, you know, give you guys as much of an honest shake as I can. But we'll get there in time. He's very biased whenever it comes to Genshin being better. Well, you know what else is very biased? The entire Chinese population. So it's like you can say, oh, well, he's biased about the game. Oh, he's biased. But, like, the whole population of the country seems to think this. So at a certain point, even if you think that it is bias, you should take into consideration what he's saying. And like, the numbers are biased. Like, the thing with Tower of Fantasy being popular in the U.S., I know that at the beginning he compared it to... let's see, can I, let me see here. Can I just go ahead and do this? He compared it over to Genshin Impact, and Genshin Impact only has 10,000 viewers. Of course that's going to be the case. It's the same thing that whenever Lost Ark has a new raid come out, it's going to eclipse all of the other MMOs in viewership. When Final Fantasy has a raid come out, it's going to eclipse all the other games in viewership. Now, outside of main releases, World of Warcraft and Lost Ark are the two most popular games on Twitch. That's just what it is. Those are what the numbers show. And outside of that, I think Tower of Fantasy is going to be below them. I think it will be above Genshin Impact on a regular basis because it's a multiplayer game. So you have more chances that Twitch as a social platform will also appreciate and enjoy watching social experiences. I think that makes sense. But it depends also on how the content comes out. Also, I think it will be above Final Fantasy just because Final Fantasy, it seems like it's just not a game people like to watch. That's really all it comes down to. Outside of MSQ reactions and, you know, like world first content and stuff like that, people don't really like watching the game that much. And so Genshin isn't really a streaming game. Yeah, I think Tower of Fantasy could lend itself a little bit better towards streaming, but I don't know enough about Genshin Impact to say that. I also want to say that, like, Genshin Impact is not an MMORPG. Tower of Fantasy is an MMORPG. I think that it's fair that you can compare viewership of different games inside of the same genre. But whenever you're comparing an MMORPG to an RPG, you're going to lose something there. Because people watch a game for different reasons in different genres. So as soon as you start adding in, like, for example, Clash of Clans isn't very popular at all on Twitch, but it's bigger than pretty much any other game on Twitch. Why is that? Well, it's because there's not a community around watching mobile games in general. Like there's no mobile game that's popular, so you're not really comparing Clash of Clans with other games. You're comparing it with other mobile games, other like strategy-based mobile games. So I think that's what's important, and that's what you need to think about. But they're on you like Candy Crush too. I think Candy Crush is a great example. Like Roblox, yeah. So play Genshin and give us an honest opinion. What's better? Yeah, sure. That'll take me a while though. I doubt those 500K were actual people. Apparently they botted. I think that you have a lot of people, especially on the release of a game, that want to try it out or at least watch it. Because there's a lot of people, like how many of you guys watched me play Tower of Fantasy? Maybe you're still watching me playing it, and you haven't downloaded the game, but you're thinking like, oh, well, you know, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with the end game, and if the end game is good, I'm going to play the game. I think that's the case with a lot of things. Genshin botted too. I think that it's just as simple. Like if you introduce drops, you will have people that are outside of the Twitch audience that will just watch the stream for drops. A good example is like, do you remember how like XQC lost like 600,000 followers in one day? And the reason for that is because a bunch of people made follower bot accounts in order to follow bot his account to get Valorant keys. Like, and this happened to Summit, this happened to Nick for like a different reason. This has happened in many cases. So whenever you introduce something like drops or any sort of a reward system inside of viewership for Twitch, you can throw all of those numbers in the garbage. However, if the viewership difference between the viewership of the game before and after drops is very small, you can clearly indicate that there is not that many people playing the game. So for example, with New World, whenever New World goes up 2,000 players, whenever they add a drop campaign into the game, that's probably a good indication that a lot of people don't care about the game. But if they added drops for World of Warcraft, or they've done it for Lost Ark in the past, it went up tremendously because the game, and Escape from Tarkov is probably one of the best examples, is that Escape from Tarkov massively pops off. Why does it pop off? It's not because it's the game, it's because of the drops. I want to download, but I saw shit's pay to win. Yeah, I think so. All 500K Genshin viewers are baby raging because of 3.0. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. But Tarkov's actually good, though? It doesn't matter, because people will watch a game for drops because they want the rewards inside of the game. And also, because Tarkov's viewership goes up substantially whenever they have a drop campaign, that would indicate that the people that are watching the game are actually players of the game, of course, because those extra people will be watching for the drops. And if you are invested in the game, you would care about the drops, because if you don't care about the game, you wouldn't care about the drops. So if you're doing it and you're watching the game, that would be an indicator that that many people actually play the game. So if you have a tremendous increase in viewership between drops and no drops, that means, or no drops and drops, that means that you have a lot of people that are playing the game. It's just logic. It's fucking common sense. You just think about it. So, Genshin, you have nothing to do. I have to master a new character, which normally takes 3 days max. Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I'm not going to make a statement about, like, which game is better, because I've never played Genshin Impact. I've only played Tower of Fantasy, and I played it for 3 or 4 days. What the fuck do I know? Stream attack don't get much more emotional responses. Genshin's very bad for multiplayer and repeatable content, because so many content creators get frustrated. I don't think it's the video game's responsibility to provide a platform for streamers to make content with it. However, there is a mutual gain. So, like, I don't think it's their responsibility. However, it is better if that's the case. That's why, for example, a lot of video games have like anti-stream sniping policies and harassment stuff, and, you know, they'll help streamers with other things, because it's just something that's like, it's common sense. It's like, well, they're getting rid of somebody who has, you know, bad intentions, and they're also helping somebody who's benefiting the game. So I think that's one thing, but you should never expect to just play one video game as a streamer and hope that that video game will encompass all of your content in perpetuity. It's an unfair expectation, and I think that expectation was actually put on World of Warcraft with actual content by the players. So the players think that, oh, well, this game has to, you know, it has to be entertaining for me for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, forever. And guess what you get out of that? Well, you get endless artifact power grinds. You get, artifact knowledge. You get Titan forging. Like Legion, you know, Blizzard was like, oh, you guys feel like you're not able to play the game enough and there's not enough things for you to do? All right, fuck you. Here's Legion. And you know what? We got it. And you could play the game 10 hours a day, and you'd be better than somebody that played the game 5 hours a day. And guess what? I played the game 10 hours a day back then. It was awesome. However, I'm very glad that it's not that way anymore. So, you should not try to make the game appealing, or you should not try to expect that one game will always appeal to an audience or will always have content that people want to see. I think that Final Fantasy players, ironically, actually have the best they have the best outlook on this, is that they know this about Final Fantasy. They know the game is not going to just be infinite, endless content. They play through the content. They love the content. They appreciate the content. And then they move on to play other content. It's a healthy relationship with expectations. World of Warcraft players do not have a healthy relationship with expectations. So Genshin Impact, I think, also, for content creators can be disappointing in that way. And also because Genshin Impact doesn't have a lot of other games that it is adjacent to or like tangential to, it's harder to, let's say, transition from playing Genshin Impact to playing PUBG or to playing Albion Online or New World or Sea of Thieves, because the gameplay is just so much different and the aesthetic is so much different. Like, for example, it's pretty easy to go from playing, Warzone to playing Apex. Even though they're completely different paradigms in games, like in terms of it, you're using like laser guns in this gun, using an M16 in this game, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Even like Fortnite to PUBG, like they're all generally the same type of game. So I think that's the reason why Genshin Impact creators would be more frustrated than creators for other types of games, is because Genshin Impact is really one of the only games that is like Genshin Impact in that category that people like watching. I know World of Warcraft streamers have the same problem with WoW. I went on like a super long tangent about this, but hopefully you guys can see like why I think some of these comparisons are very circumstantial. So I'll link the video again. I think this is some good insight that I didn't know about. So make sure to give this guy Nerfa Me. Make sure to give him some support. He's only got 5K subs, right? So might as well give him a little bit of support, man. I think this is good. I'm glad to see it, and I think it's a very useful thing to see. No one cares about Genshin creators, though? Well, I think that they obviously do. If they didn't care about them, they wouldn't be trying to cancel them on Twitter every day.